Days after a devastating port explosion rocked the city of Beirut, shock has turned to anger. Many accuse the government of corruption and mismanagement. The blast, which destroyed critical food supplies and entire neighborhoods, leaving hundreds of thousands homeless, was the result of neglect.
We will continue and push for protests every day, no matter what, until we topple the whole state. Not only the Speaker or Parliament or the Prime Minister or the President, everyone must resign.
These protests are the biggest since October, when demonstrators took to the streets over deepening poverty, power blackouts and job losses. It led to the formation of a new government led by Prime Minister Hassan Diab, but living standards haven't improved since. Purchasing power has weakened, with the Lebanese pound losing nearly 80% of its value since October and inflation skyrocketing 56%. Unemployment rose to 30% last month. The blow to Lebanese businesses is set to drive up that number. And GDP is expected to shrink by up to 25% this year. That's double the IMF's recent forecast of 12% and makes it even harder to get the financing the country needs to rebuild. Information Minister Manal Abdel Samad was the first to step down on Saturday over public pressure.
This is the point of no return. The people are hungry. The economy is collapsing. The economic, financial, and monetary crisis is escalating. Our family, children, relatives, and friends are homeless, inhabited by grief, despair, and frustration. I apologize to the Lebanese people.
But protesters believe that's all too little, too late.
This is theatrical. When you feel that everybody is dead and you don't resign at the same moment, you wait 3 days, 4 days. What do you think?
World leaders have on Sunday pledged nearly $300 million in financial support. That would cover only a tiny fraction of the $15 billion needed to recover from the explosion. It's a bill Beirut won't be able to pay on its own, as it struggles with public debt of more than 150% of GDP. Lebanon is no stranger to turmoil and devastation, but it seems changing both the country's economic and political landscape will be tougher than ever before. Sibel Karkus, TRT World.
Well, for more on this, Torek Farhadi joins us now from Geneva. He's former economic advisor at the International Monetary Fund, the World Bank and at the United Nations. Welcome back to the program, Torek. Now, the Lebanese parliament had only elected Prime Minister Hassan Diab last December after months of protests against corruption, and now Diab's government is stepping down in the wake of this deadly blast last week. Will a new leadership be able to help Lebanon out of its economic meltdown? What does it need to do?
Well, a new leadership would need to bring confidence because the currency has depreciated by 80%. And before the government resigned, the 3 ministers already resigned, and elections are needed as soon as possible in order for confidence to come back, because it's not a state collapse in Lebanon, it's an economic collapse. And really this explosion has expedited this crisis upon this prime minister. He would have survived, but I think the explosion has expedited the crisis.
It sure has, and there are estimates that the damage caused by last week's explosion is approximately $15 billion worth, but at a recent virtual donors conference, countries had pledged $300 million, but there are still concerns that a lot of this money will end up lining the pockets of corrupt politicians. Do you share those same concerns?
Well, yes, the Lebanese share these concerns. They don't trust their political class. They don't trust the political elite. The $300 million that were pledged at the donors conference is purely humanitarian aid, because there is 100,000 people homeless. Half of Lebanon's population has fallen under the poverty line because of this inflation situation. Unemployment because the economy is not doing well, people don't have jobs, and this aid, this $300 million aid, is humanitarian aid. The real aid, which could come from the IMF, would be in the billions, but the IMF has first asked for an audit of the national bank. Billions of dollars of capital have also left Lebanon since last October, and if confidence came back, then the currency would do better and some of this money could come back.
Yeah, let's talk about this potential IMF bailout, because we know talks stalled between the Lebanese government and the IMF this year over a potential $10 billion loan to the country. But at this donor conference, the IMF set out 4 key conditions in order for it to perhaps be reconsidered in getting this money, and that was restoring the financial solvency of the state, cutting losses at state-owned companies, passing a law to regulate capital outflows, and setting up a social safety net. Does this need to be, I guess, a matter of urgency for the next Prime Minister and government, after, of course, the aftermath of that explosion?
Yes, and this is the very reason that there's a need for a government to be in place to negotiate with the IMF such a package. Yes, and the state-owned enterprises, such as the electricity company, which only offers intermittent electricity, has also $1.5 billion in losses. Lebanon's system is a sectarian confessional system, so it's divided state, and each part of this government has their patronage system and clientelism. And that's why it's a very bloated government. And it's not only in the government that there is corruption, but in these other state-owned enterprises like water, energy, trash. All these are in different hands, and money sort of disappears instead of really giving services to the people. So the people who are out in the street are protesting about this lack of service that a government, a state, has to provide. The only thing that now the state provides, it's the army, which works well. It's there, and Lebanon is staying as a sovereign state, but all other services are not there.
Okay, Torek Farhadi in Geneva, thank you again for sharing with us your analysis on the program.